thank you for joining us for today's discussion, Digital Transformation Through Disruption. I am Sebastian Menuti, Industry Principal at Frost Sullivan, and I will be moderating today's conversation. Okay, so today's speakers are Eric Burdilis and Bob Decant. Eric is VP of Customer Experience at Lyft. Since 2014, Eric has worked in this company to build systems and teams that deliver best-in-class experiences for Lyft's community of drivers and passengers. Even as the company grew from 80 million to 900 million rides annually over the past 5 years. And get this, from 2017 to 2020, his team was named America's Best Customer Service by Newsweek. Welcome, Eric, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Great. So Bob Decant is the CEO of ibex since 2015. Bob actually started the company's BPO 2.0 revolution, leading ibex transformation into a tech-led, digitally driven, award-winning provider of end-to-end customer life cycles and digital transformation solutions for leading new economy and blue chip brands. At ibex, Bob has made the strategic investments in technology, people, and nearshore and offshore growth, expanding ibex footprint in the emerging dynamic markets of Nicaragua, Jamaica, and the Philippines. And lastly, but not least, in August 2020, Bob led ibex successful IPO on NASDAQ, the first BPO to go public since 2007. Welcome, Bob, and great seeing you again.
Seb, thanks for that introduction. That was a mouthful, but great to be with you. And for those that don't know Seb, I'll do just a brief. Seb is based out of Argentina and one of the, just leading authorities of understanding the BPO space, and in particular, the whole nearshore markets from the Caribbean through Central America to South America. So it's great to be with you, Seb, and thanks for joining us. Eric, thanks for joining as well.
Awesome, thank you for that, Bob. Before we start, I just want to let everyone know that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the discussion. So please feel free to submit any questions you might have during the conversation in the Q&A button, and we'll get to those towards the end. All right, so today we will be discussing about digital transformation through disruption. And of course, if we're going to talk about disruption, we need to bring up 2020 here. So actually at Frost & Sullivan, during the last quarter of 2020, we surveyed over 1,000 IT decision makers from companies from all around the world, and 46% of them told us that COVID accelerated digital transformation initiatives in their organizations. But at the same time, 55% of respondents said that the pandemic delayed the purchase of transformative technology. So what does this mean? I think this means that a lot of the transformation hasn't been around purchasing new technology, but partnering with service providers that can deliver that transformation. But I want to hear how you feel about this, Eric. What has been the case for Lyft? Would you say that the massive disruption we are all living actually increased the pace of digital transformation for you guys?
Yeah, I think 2020 in a lot of ways, to your point, disruption is a good word. Our lives, both personally and then also professionally, changed dramatically over the course of last year. Industries that weren't really on your radar suddenly became on your radar. If you've never done food delivery, as of April of last year, you probably started doing food delivery and grocery delivery. And I think for us broadly, the same thing happened. We had to rethink our business model. The things that people cared about at the start of 2020, they didn't care about at the end of 2020. And we had to really be thoughtful about how to prioritize things like safety in rides. We've always done that, but also really thinking about safety as it relates to your health and getting in a vehicle with another person and transforming our product in that way. From a customer experience perspective, we really look at technology as a way of making all of these processes seamless. And so as people had new concerns, new complaints, how do we leverage technology to answer those upfront and make their full experience with support with the product really seamless. And so like I would agree with everything that you said. You leverage technology in periods of disruption because people just genuinely expect different things of you. And that was very much the case for us through 2020.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Bob, how do you feel about this, and how did ibex help Lyft in this case?
Yeah, that's a good question, Seb. And in this, from our perspective, so many of our clients have, as they've been dealing with the pandemic, have really accelerated their business models that are, mostly digitally driven, and, whether it's e-commerce, things like that. And so as their business is accelerated, and then on the, on the provider side, a lot of the, their providers have struggled with resilience and things like that. And so where we played a big factor with our clients across the board, we're really helping, drive that digital, the scalability of the digital transformation, and being on the winning side of that. Now, interestingly enough is, with Eric, obviously the ride sharing business has, been under stress, through this. And we spent a whole lot of time around our partnership on really looking at, hey, how do we further drive a better experience around those that are interacting? And how do you really continue to move the needle up and to the right to drive further loyalty out of the customers that are still using ride sharing, or even those that aren't, but that are want to stay connected to? And so we spent a lot of time, on programmatics around that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's very good, Bob. Thank you. And I think it's time to listen to you guys viewing this discussion. So I'm going to launch a poll right now, so you can see that on your screen. And we want to ask you, what value-added services do you expect from your BPO or technology partner? And this is a multiple choice, and you get CX technology and integrations resource, customer acquisition capabilities, insights and analytics partner, agent and contact center performance technology, and contact centers that offer value and performance, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to give it another second so everyone can vote. And in the meantime, please remember that you can submit your questions in the Q&A button next to the participants button. So feel free to do that. All right, so I'm going to show the results now. And I think this is really interesting results. Insights and analytics is way up there. I want to hear your thoughts about this, Bob.
Sure, and that's, it's interesting. That's exactly what I would have thought was insights and analytics. And it's premised around this, in my belief, is more than ever, the customer experience, and which then, is a proxy for customer loyalty and lifetime value of a customer is really important. And so understanding where the detractors are, understanding what customers really, really like about a product or a service are more important than ever in the world of trying to build deeper and deeper loyalty. And whether it's a technology provider that has the tools that grab that, or a partner like us that can then leverage business intelligence and people to go dive into that and provide those valuable insights. To me, that's where every one of our clients are saying, hey, tell us what you're hearing so we can build better relationships.
Bob, maybe to just add on to that, I think there's a place where there were very different consumer expectations over the past year. And as businesses, it was exceptionally difficult to understand those, react to those, change products. And so looking to partners, both technologically and BPOs, to listen to consumers and actually understand what they wanted, what were their new requirements of dealing with you, was exceptionally important. Customer expectations changed. People's expectations of like what was a good product or service changed dramatically. If you remember early pandemic, like you have things like Amazon delivery, and it went from a day or two to like weeks. And overnight, your expectation of like, okay, so like I need these products or services. My expectation was 1 or 2 day shipping, and now it's like 1 or 2 weeks. And I think every industry struggled with that as supply chains got disrupted, as travel got disrupted, of like, what are these new expectations? But even within that, like, what do my customers want and need out of this? And having partners that are able to tell you with a certain amount of specificity at that time of, here's what they need today, and here's how those needs are changing over time, is just paramount in today's world.
You're spot on. And I mean, just think about, you know, the changes that did take place, as, you know, as you highlighted. And, you know, it's interesting, and I'll just, from my own perspective, it took a shock when all of a sudden you realize you couldn't get something in 24 hours, or you couldn't go to Costco and, you know, pick up what you needed, right? But you got used to that really fast. What was amazing is how fast the industry then adapted, and those supply chains actually solved, and they started getting, you know, the products that everybody needed, wanted, and all of that solved real fast. And you know, that was a fast close from my standpoint on how the industry reacted. And I think a lot of that came from analytics of just, you know, hey, what did the customer say, and provide that back.
Yeah, it's really impressive, guys. We brought up disruption and transformation. I think we also need to talk about agile, right? In this context, especially, because I think partnering with an agile BPO has become so fundamental for companies of all sizes, because contingencies are likely to happen again. So business continuity as well is key now. And actually at Frost & Sullivan, we are seeing that BPOs had the chance to both prove and improve their agility during 2020, when they had to massively move the majority of their agents to a remote work environment, right? And they still had to keep the operation working smoothly. That is, maintaining KPIs, that's customer satisfaction, average handle time, etc., improving security, and ultimately adding more technology to the equation to make it work, right? So Bob, let me ask you now, how did you guys become more agile in this context?
Yeah, and it's funny, Seb, I was just thinking, you know, today being April 1st, April Fool's Day, but, you know, with my team, we were just reflecting on when a year ago, and it was March 15th, I believe, when the Philippines announced extended enhanced quarantining, and that's when basically the travel lock shut down overnight, and you had a 2-day notice, I think was all it was, to figure out how to get equipment dispersed at that moment in time. So start with the definition of agile. You have 48 hours to, and there's 1.4 million contact center agents in the Philippines, just as, you know, highlighting that region, and every region had similar events like this. So you got 48 hours to figure out how to take 1.4 million contact center jobs and call volumes and all of that stuff and get those resilient. That's being able to execute that and do that is called agile. We were able to get clients implemented in 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, you know, where you just figured it out, logistics, equipment dispersed. And it started with that. So that was like, I think, the most stark contrast in what I think in this industry around players that are really fast, agile, and are driven that allows them to go do that. Let me fast forward now to a major paradigm shift that's happened in this industry around agile. And in my belief, you know, and it started with, you know, kind of when you would bring and win a great brand like Lyft, quite often you would start with a slow burn in on your launch, and you'd start slow, and you'd start with 50, 75 people and clients for the last several years. You'd win, and they, you know, build the model, build the nucleus, and spend 180 or 120 days, maybe 190 days, 120 days to figure the operating model, and then hit the gas and scale. What I've seen change drastically in this world of agile, and I call this, you know, really scalability on demand. And it's where now clients are looking and saying, I need 700 people and I need them by next Monday. And how fast can you get that? And can you get that? And we've been implementing solutions like that, as has some of my competitors. But these are the needs that are out there that our clients are having. Why? Because many are so successful in their respective, you know, spaces, and they're very resilient, and they're winning, and their volumes are through the roof, driven, you know, kind of by this digital world. Others are because other partners are less resilient, or center maybe offline because of COVID, or their internal operations is struggling. And so today, clients are looking for how fast can you do that, and can you do it immediately? In the world of agile technology, work at home, combination brick and mortar allows us to be able to, you know, really hit those needs. And so it's been an amazing, what I'll call now 12 months journey around speed, agility, and scalability. Eric, I'd love your thoughts on that, because you know, you're connected, yeah. You know, your business, but I know you're so plugged into, you know, what's happening, you know, around you as well.
Yeah, I would say we always are thinking agile first. As Sebastian like brought up my bio, the trajectory has been that for the entirety of my period here at Lyft. You have these pops in business that are unexpected, and you have to figure out how to respond and react to them. And so I think we think about it from two axes. One, it's like, what technologies help you scale super quickly when you need to scale, and then what partners help you scale super quickly when you need to scale. And on the latter, a lot of what you went over, Bob, is spot on, where overnight our model for how we engage contact centers changed, and we needed to move from in-center model to a work-at-home model overnight. We needed to figure out how to make sure that the technology was stable, that we still had the right oversight and quality controls, and that we were able to adapt to those changing business needs. I think in 21, it's going to be different in a really, really healthy and good way, which is, as the world slowly starts to return to normal, how do we quickly respond to our customers' expectations of how fast these services come back? And I think having scalable technology on one side and then scalable partnerships on the other to meet that demand is really of critical importance. And so I would say for us, agility has always been important. And then I think the marriage of those two things, like great technology and great partners that are able to respond and react really, really quickly to changing business environments, is so crucial as well.
Yeah, it's a challenging environment indeed. So guys, I want to move on to the next topic, and for that, I'm going to be launching a new poll here. So again, I please ask you to take a moment of your time, take a look at the screen, and choose your option. The question is, what are your top 3 investment priorities for the next 12 months? And again, this is a multiple choice. We have customer experience survey platform. We have social reputation management platforms. We have business intelligence and performance management. We have AI and RPA, and we also have security, and then others, okay? So just 2 more seconds, because I see we still have answers getting in. Okay, now I'm going to show them. Here we go. And looks like business intelligence and performance management is way up there, and security is number 2. Eric, what do you take on this?
Yeah, I think I agree. Like data rules the world, or at least should. Like if you do not deeply understand your customers, like you are incapable of serving them. You can only talk to a finite amount of people in any given day, and so I think being able to aggregate and understand who your customers are, what they care about, and what they need helps you make better business decisions and helps you design just better customer experiences, period. And so I would say absolutely essential in terms of customer experience technologies to invest in. I think performance management makes sense as well, right? Like how do you understand how to invest those dollars wisely, and like how your team is doing is really important. But it starts with who your customers are and what do your customers want.
Hey, Eric,
Bob, what do you think? How are you thinking about it from a vendor point of view?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I was just going to say number 2 on that is was the security piece. And
yeah.
I think the way I interpret that answer, and I thought it actually may even beat out business intelligence and kind of performance management. With the world of work at home, it's created an amazing opportunity for threat actors and to really look and say, how can I go into companies, into their networks, into that were fairly strong, fairly bulletproof, but with a massive dispersal of equipment around, that opens some exposures. And I read a thing the other day on, I think it was a Wall Street Journal, that just said, threat actors and things like that are up 1,000% in the last 12 months. And I think that's driven by, this big move to work at home. And so, and it's not to, I think BPOs, technology partners, and, our clients and all of that stuff all have responsibility in that ecosystem to, to really think through that and make sure that we're protecting, your customers' data and our data and your data.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Bob. I think we've seen tremendous innovation and advance in the security field, because actually security was like the #1 concern companies had before the pandemic to move to a work environment, a remote work environment. I mean, and what you guys have pulled off with around security is really impressive. So I want to keep talking about CX now, because
can I make one more comment on the security piece? I think it's from a customer experience perspective and kind of where we sit, there's an interesting blend of 2 things. It's like you have technologies that enable it, and then there's a social engineering component too. If you watch the like New York Times presents, like the guy who hacked Twitter, it was social engineering. It was like brute force calling a ton of customer service agents until he got their credentials. And so I think security in today's age is like, how are you really buttoned up and making sure all your data is secure, and from a security perspective, and how do you make sure your teams are not vulnerable to attacks, and like, how are you making sure that you're adequately training them and protecting them? How do you make sure you have the right system blocks in place to prevent access to customer data on that's not supposed to happen? And so I really think it's that combination of the 2 things that we sit at the center at, and is super important to get right, especially to Bob's point, like with all of us being at home, being 1 step removed.
Great point.
Great point indeed. So I was saying that we all know that CX has been going digital for maybe a decade. And actually our survey at Frost Sullivan shows that customer care is the #1 priority for digital transformation investment. Okay, so when we ask companies to tell us where to invest or where they are going to invest, CX is up there. And I think it makes sense because customer experience is becoming the primary factor, I think, impacting customer loyalty. And let me give you just a few quick data points for this, okay? So 80% of customers say that the experience a company provides is as important as its products and services. 57% say they have stopped buying from a company and went to the competition who gave them a better experience. And 82% of CX decision makers say their company's customer service must transform to stay competitive. So, Bob, let me ask you, what are you guys doing to stay competitive and to transform CX?
You know, it's a really great point, Sebastian, and I'll just share. I read, you know, that CX is the number one, you know, kind of to your point, it's the number one issue or objective on the CEO's desktop. 15 years ago, this industry was such a labor arbitrage industry. The CEO, you know, this industry might have been on the CFOs just from a sheer cost saving standpoint. Now it just is, to me, it's so different because of the importance of it. And it's been driven by disruptors like Lyft that have come into markets and just changed things around. And I look at it this way, and I'll just, you know, kind of reach over and grab my, you know, my phone. It's driven by these great technology companies that have created, you know, apps and things like that, that it starts with an amazing experience on the app. And then they have built this powerful engine that says that experience is awesome, and I got to keep that experience fantastic throughout. And if there's an issue that happens, that occurs, we cannot have a dip in that experience, and they have to reach out. We have to delight that customer, because if we do, we get the lifetime value of that customer. And so now that's set this, and Eric, I think you used the word expectation. It's like this expectation is just set around that. And so many clients then are looking and saying, how do I, that might not have this amazing first awesome experience, how do I transform that digitally? And then how do I transform an experience across at that highest level? And so for us as a provider, we spend a lot of time with our clients working on saying, how do you change that? How do you, you know, by us working with great brands like Lyft and some of these leading new economy companies, how do we go into, you know, what I would say is older world companies that are saying, I have to transform my business. And the guns was put to their head through the pandemic. And so it's technology. It's putting in not just agents, it's technology. It's putting in, you know, the front end of the, you know, of technology, of interaction. So you get scalability without just people. And it's putting in, you know, so think of simply think of chat bots and SMS solutions all the way on down. And I just think that's how we, you know, from a BPO standpoint, that's where we plug in. And, you know, and it's really driven by just, you know, this CX being number one in this industry. By the way, that's my whole thesis, Seb, about BPO 2.0 is such a change in this industry. And there are the haves and the have-nots from clients that win, and haves and have-nots from, you know, the providers that you know, that can do that not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eric, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think great companies are formed when you solve an interesting customer problem. I think great companies expand and capture market share when they continue to innovate on delivering great customer experiences within that very fundamental problem. And so I think everything Bob said, I agree with is true, right? Like you get that experience, right? And you iterate off it as customer expectations change and evolve. And then you ensure that when that experience breaks, you deliver you still deliver on that brand promise of making it easy. And it's kind of that connecting strand through those three things that's really critical. It's like solve a problem that's meaningful for consumers, make it really easy for them, and continue to like level up and improve that experience. And then when that experience breaks, when you break that brand promise, how do you maintain that and transform that so it still is a good experience? Would be those components.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm going to launch the last poll of today. So again, one more time, I ask you to take a look at your screen, select one option. And what we're asking now is, what nearshore regions are you most interested in for CX outsourcing? Okay, so you have the Caribbean, you have Central America, you have South America, and then you have Mexico. Okay, so one more, let me just remind you that you get to ask questions in the Q&A button, and we'll get to all of those at the end of the discussion, right? So I see we still have...
Hey, Seb, I know you could probably spend 2 hours with the group on these questions and go through the pros and cons of each of these markets and provide enormous insight into that for the audience. We should do that as a follow-on sometime.
Absolutely, I love that. Well, let's take a look at this first, because I really think this, let me show the results here. I really think that these results make a lot of sense. We're seeing that Caribbean nations have been showing some solid traction in nearshore in the last couple of years, and consider Jamaica, but there are so many other islands that are doing so well. And I think there are good reasons for that, like a strong cultural affinity with the US, with US brands, US culture in general, like a good accent, like better prices than onshore services, of course. I would say that even the proximity, the geographical proximity compared to having your operation in India or the Philippines, that could take up maybe one full day to go there to visit your operation. While if you have it in the Caribbean, it's like a 2 or 3 hours flight. So it's right there. And that on a day-to-day basis, that's really important, I think. I don't know, how do you see that, Bob?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as you know, I'm a big fan of the nearshore markets, and we've built, you know, in my 5 years here, 5.5 years, we built, you know, the biggest, fastest growing BPO in, you know, in the nearshore, second to none, and our presence. And so I'm just a big believer of the nearshore markets for, you highlighted those, proximity, affinity, but you know, and it complements well, right? I think it's not a one or the other, but it's very, very complementary to a lot of those markets. I would say, you know, and it's kind of interesting. And Eric, I really want your thoughts on this. Would love your thoughts, but you know, the common knowledge or common thesis of digital, though, is not in nearshore. You know, so many people are digital, I'm going to move it all to India. And I'm so contrarian to that. And I am, you know, and they do that, well, it's because it's the lowest price point and they're not on the phones talking to an agent. And it's, you know, it's just digital. And I looked and said, no, that's just looking at it wrong. A digital experience is an experience. And the same rules apply with the exception you're not on the phone. But what does matter is understanding the context. What does matter is understanding, you know, why the caller is calling in and the environment that they may be calling in those environments, and the products and services, and the affinity that the nearshore market has, and understanding how all of this stuff works in the US. It fits hand in glove. And so if you really, and in the world of, number one is CX to the CEOs. And so when you look at that, a digital decision should not be made at about the lowest cost labor market. It should be where you can actually deliver the best CX experience at a great price point. First best experience in the nearshore market's absolutely fantastic for that. Eric, I know you got a lot of experience on, you know, in the market. So, you know, probably the audience would love to hear through your lens.
Yeah, I honestly don't know if I have too much more to add. I feel like you both said it super well. But I think my point of view on it is proximity, both in terms of like flight time, but then also just cultural proximity goes miles for North American consumers. And so I think just being that close, having exposure to the U.S. and North American culture and language, and understanding like what consumers in America look like and how they respond and what they value and how they interact creates better experiences down the road. And so I think it's a smart choice for a lot of people that are looking to balance great experiences and low cost, and I think delivers to what you said, Bob, like a really great blend of getting digital transformation paired with customer experience.
That's really great. And let me add just one more data point to that. Because as Bob mentioned, we do research this market very closely at Frost Sullivan. And we're seeing that nearshore is forecast to be the fastest growing fulfillment region for the contact center US market, right? So it's going to increase its revenues by 9.8, close to 10% in 2021 compared to 2020. And that's the highest rate we're going to see worldwide. So, and I think you both mentioned why, right? So I would like to move on to the last topic of today's webinar, and that is how to maintain and amplify your culture in a remote work environment, in a remote CX work environment. You know, because one of the biggest challenges of any remote operation is the problem of engagement, right? Because if you see home agents, they can get isolated, they can feel isolated if they are not engaged, let's say on a weekly basis at least, especially if the employee doesn't go to the company's facilities from time to time, right? So I think that is why it is imperative to establish frequent and appealing communications with the agents to establish an emotional bond with their remote agents. This is proving crucial, I think. One more thing before I'll ask you guys, but I think it's important to say that we all know that CX revolves around people, right? So the employee experience is essential for the high quality customer experience. Without a committed and happy employee, like positive and memorable customer experience are really unlikely. And our research shows that 89% of executives are seeing this, are understanding that a strong employee experience leads to a better customer experience. So this is why I think EX is increasingly an area of focus for forward-thinking BPOs. Let me hear what you think, Bob, please.
Sure. So, you know, we've built our business premised on, you know, the goal is to deliver amazing experiences to the employee, create, and in particular, our agents. And the agents are at the center of the universe. And it's interesting. And I was on with one of our partners today that did some studies for us. And it's really interesting and a big change. And I'll share this with you. Our agents in a brick and mortar, and prior to the pandemic, were at the center of the universe. And they're in a center. And so think of the center of the universe being the agent. But you have this amazing support structure around that agent. You have your supervisor that's kind of on the operational side and making sure that the agent's prepared to do their day job. You have HR. We have a whole employee engagement organization that's supporting the agent. So if you just think around, clustered around the agent is this entire support system of all the functions in ibex to make that agent experience great, to make them successful on their job, which keeps them loyal to us, keeps them tenured for us, and keeps them engaged for our clients. And I think we did do that as good as anybody. Now, in this new world, so many people work at home. And just the visual is this, that agent is out on an island, okay? And the typical model, what I've seen is in this BPO space, is you have the supervisor who they work for as now the main pathway to that agent. And the support structure is missing, okay? So you have agent, ops manager, but the support structure isn't around that agent like it is in the work at home. So now what we've done and how we've looked at this is it said, look, we can't just make virtual agent to supervisor on coaching around how they do their job. We have to make it virtual on all of the support functions. So our engagement people have to be engaged with the agents, making it fun. Ibex Idol, we just launched our Ibex Idol thing, you know, that agents can celebrate their talents and do that. And it just time and time again, and HR has to stay connected with them to consult and help them deal with the pandemic and the challenges they're having at home, you know, and in the work and all of that stuff. So I just think that, you know, that's the challenge in this world, but it's a big change as that agent moves out into the island. And so, and Eric, you guys, you know, from a culture and engagement standpoint, I mean, you guys were the model. And I think a lot of what I saw was when I go out to, you know, San Francisco and see just the cool things you guys would do in your headquarters and your centers. So I'm sure you have a great perspective on this.
Yeah, I have two separate thoughts. I would say the first is like everything that you all said around like great customer experiences start with great employee experiences. If your employees aren't happy and they're not supported, you are almost guaranteed that your customers are not going to be happy and supported. And so starting with that, Bob, I think you put it like the agent is the center of the universe or the world, whatever that looks like, is absolutely true. It's kind of that consent, the rings going out from like, if you're putting customer first, then you have to put your agent first because they're the ones serving your customer. And then I think it becomes this like, the second piece is like this story of how do you do that well? How do you do that effectively? And how do you do it well when this agent's now out on an island? And I think there's a place where you have to keep listening and evolving your approach. I think different parts of the pandemic in the last year have called for different things. I think at first it was this like period of adjustment and making sure everyone actually had the resources and ability to be effective working from home. They had the right internet connection, they had the right equipment. And then I think it evolved a little bit in the summer, at least here in the States, and talking more about internal teams to how are we supporting everyone's mental health and mental well-being? Are we listening and creating we do inclusion circles to make sure that we are understanding everyone's unique experience and creating space and time for them to process. And so I think it's that constant like listening and iterating, and it's grounded in the stuff that our teams are already really fantastic at, which is care. It's like, how do we apply the care that we want our teams to have for our customers to our teams? That's just really, really important. It's hard though. I think there's this mixture of desire to like come back together in that environment, and I think you feel and see that a lot. But then there's also ways to make it fun. As a leadership team this past week, we did a chocolate making class together. It was all virtual, like got in the mail, and it was just a really neat hour that broke up our week and made chocolate with a chocolatier out of San Francisco. And so I think if you lean in and listen and find times and create spaces for people to engage, people will show up in that way.
Very cool.
That's very good. Okay, so maybe just to say a few last words, I want to say that we're all seeing that the CX landscape is changing so rapidly. And at the same time, we're seeing that the field is gaining more attention and greater priority in terms of investment. And we're also seeing that the space is becoming much more tech intensive, right? So we're seeing emerging tools providing their power to create a seamless and an effortless experience, and at the same time reducing cost in the front and in the back. So to make it short, I think that the right mix among people, processes, and technology is allowing successful BPOs to bring reliable and agile transformation capabilities, to bring those to their clients, I mean. But with that, Bob, any thoughts on this before we move on to Q&A?
You know, Seb, I think we've hit a lot of these points and all of that stuff. So I'll, you know, I'll kind of move. I think there's some good Q&As here that, you know, probably to get onto. Yeah. But this, you know, this has been some really good dialogue. I've enjoyed it.
Absolutely. So we did get a lot of questions. So the first one can either go to you, Bob, or to Eric. Do you think, guys, that rideshare CX volumes will eventually return to normal? And if so, how are you preparing for this?
I'll defer to you, Eric.
Yeah.
You are the domain expert here.
Totally. I would say, like, we're already seeing travel come back and transit being a really important component of that. And so I would say, like, preparedness happens in two ways. And we talked about this a lot in the agility section, so I won't rehash too much of that. But I think it starts with, like, really good forecasting, a really agile partner, because it's how do we prepare for something? And there's a lot of uncertainty in that something. And so how do we make sure that we're planning for all edge cases? And then I think the final piece is just getting the right technologies in place based on what you know today. And so for us, that's look like a really material investment. It's like great self-help, self-serve. Like, how do we empower and enable our associates to provide great service on the things that we really need humans to touch? And then how do we make self-help and self-serve, like, hyper available for the stuff that they don't necessarily need to touch, or they would answer in the same way every time they get it? And so I would say it's that agility piece of, like, how do you be ready for anything? And I think things are going to start changing in a good way over the next 6 months, and we just have to be ready for all of those use cases.
Hey, Eric, let me ask you a question. Do you think, with so many people moving out of the city, right, and then out into the suburbs as a result of the pandemic, how do you think that's going to impact rideshare? My thesis is you're going to have a lot more longer rides rather than, you know, the $5 ride just around, you know, a few blocks in San Fran, but, you know, you're going to have a lot more, you know, $35, $40 rides. But I'm just kind of curious your thought.
Yeah, and I'll state this as, like, just Eric's perspective and opinions. I think it's been fascinating watching different large employers come back with their, like, policies of when we return to work. Amazon was a big one that I announced yesterday. And if you saw, it's like, as soon as we're able, realistically late summer, our expectation is everyone comes back in the office. There are other other tech startups like Coinbase that have, like, declared we are full remote, we will be full remote. And so I think we'll see a mixture of things. I think one thing is fairly certain is, like, and this is, again, Eric's personal opinion, is, like, book your summer travel. Like, Nashville, the vaccine became available to everyone 16 and up. Across the board in the States, I think now it's like 20% plus. I think people by the summer are going to feel comfortable in ways that they haven't in over a year. And I think there's a lot of pent up demand to go visit family, to see friends, to just get out of the house a little bit more. And so regardless if commutes are longer, I think we'll just see a lot of people starting to move like they did pre-pandemic. I also think we'll continue to see some of the same behaviors that we have seen in COVID, where people are staying home and, like, still doing a lot of on-demand services. But my hunch is we'll see a lot of people trying to leave their house if they've been stuck at home for a while. I've been stuck at home with a 3-year-old and 1-year-old, and I know that's me to a T.
A leading indicator will be TSA, right? How many people pass TSA security?
Yeah. Make sure you have your pre-check prepped.
That's very good. Makes sense. So, guys, how does any of you see the gig economy developing as a staffing channel in light of the recent court rulings granting greater rights to workers?
I'll say in our world, I don't see the gig economy playing, other than in the world of, companies that is their business model, like live ops and all, where, that they have a whole bunch of people that just sign on and, and kind of bill per call or whatever, per however many, incident, experiences they're handling. Our business is all around relationship, reliability on scheduling, things like that, experience, and being domain experts on our clients' products and services. And I don't think you can do that effectively in a gig economy type model.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think just to add to that, I think if you look at what you want to leverage humans for in a BPO environment, it's to deliver great customer experiences, which I do believe you can do with minimal context. But I think more than anything, it's deepening of those customer relationships. And with limited context, I think that piece is hard. And so I think there's a lot of great technologies out there that can help perform this task, because what you're looking for is like on-demand scale. And there's a lot of great technologies that can help you do on-demand scale really well, without just throwing bodies at the problem. And I think my personal perspective is I think you're going to see even more so, like I think we've heard about AI and chatbots and machine learning a lot. Like the technology is actually like materially better and really good today in ways that it wasn't 5 to 10 years ago. And so I think we'll continue to see a lot more trending in that direction. But then also like companies deploying technology both through their BPO provider and separately to address this problem of like on-demand staff.
Right. That's very good, Derek. Thank you. So the next one is, what change or transformation that wasn't on your CX roadmap before COVID do you think is going to remain post-COVID?
I can take a stab at that. So for us, I've talked a bit about like great self-help, self-service, and that was always on our roadmap. But what COVID did was it clarified everything. It clarified like what we needed, what the priorities were, and so I would say it reinforced for us this idea that seamless doesn't always mean getting to a human really fast. Seamless means getting an answer really fast. And there was a lot of interactions where we weren't making that happen for people because they were having to wait 5-10 minutes for an agent to pick up and do something that we could have automated upstream. And so for us, it was this continued evolution, but a clarity around this to like push digital and really drive better self-help and self-serve.
Interesting. So I think one for you, I got one for you, Bob, and it reads like this. How have you guys pivoted to enterprise-grade work from home in the Philippines, which has less than desirable ISPs?
Sure. So, look, in the Philippines, it's kind of interesting. Prior to this, when people would ask you the question, work from home in these emerging markets, Philippines are, name your favorite emerging market. How's the viability of that? And you'd always come, lead first with, we don't see it as big. And we don't see it as big because of reliable power, reliable bandwidth, and the home being a great place to work. Knowing that the home environment is very different than here in the US. And what's really interesting is some of those were myths and have enabled us to actually deliver great work from home solutions in emerging markets and reliable work from home solutions and solutions that are delivering, on the client KPIs, the more the CX based, delivering great experiences. And so, but there's trade-offs, and there's trade-offs in the form of the power and the bandwidth is not as reliable. And so there are times when power goes out, and if my power went out on my home right here during this, it'd take me 5 minutes to reboot my machine and get back on this Zoom. That would be, that'd be disastrous for this call. So there are trade-offs because you do lose some efficiency out of that. And then there was the security, and I touched on security, and you have a risk around security there. So, it's a bunch of trade-offs, but it gives you amazing scalability. And I think that, if the question kind of also wants to say, how do you think this is going to play out? I think it's an and. I think that the toothpaste is out of the tube, and you're not going to get it all back into the center and all of that. People like working at home. They just, but they don't want to work 5 days a week. So it's going to be a combination of a lot of that, I think, is how this thing plays out.
Yeah, very interesting. And that had to be challenging too. So guys, we run out of time today. I don't think we have time for one more. We do have many other questions. We will get to all of those through email. So those will be answered, but just not right here and right now. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Eric, because I think you both did a fantastic job today. And I think we got some really insightful answers. And I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation.